Welcome to the show radio. And now, here is your host, Andrew Alliance.
Yo, what's up, guys? Welcome to another episode of the show radio. This is episode 329 of the show radio. I am your host, Andrew, and this is your source for tech, gaming, and entertainment news. Head over to theshowradio.info and check out my past shows there. While you're there, subscribe and tell a friend about the show. The show is on iTunes, Android, Stitcher, iHeartRadio, and Google Play. And this episode, I have Nigel Hietala. He is the solo developer for the app called Ishtar Commander, which is the app for Destiny, an awesome game that I continue to play over and over again. What I did do in this particular episode and what I'm going to do, I guess from now on, I guess I want to see how this works out, where I'll use a hashtag from on Twitter so you guys and gals can leave a question for the upcoming guest. So I'll say, well, this particular individual is coming on. Here's the hashtag. So that gives you the opportunity to leave a question for that particular guest, and I'll ask the guest the question while I'm interviewing them, and I think that's a nice touch. So definitely look for that. As far as Twitter and Facebook and all those things, it will be in the description for this particular episode and show notes. Depending on the app you're using, you'll definitely see that. So Nigel Hietala, the solo developer for Ishtar Commander, the app for Destiny. It is on Android and iOS. Definitely an awesome app, and you will hear that conversation after the break. This podcast is brought to you by ProXPN. ProXPN is a VPN service that secures your internet connection against eavesdropping, hides your location, and allows you to access your favorite sites no matter where you live or travel to. With it, no one can see the websites you visit or track your online activity. Check out theshowradio.info/ProXPN and use the promo code SHORAM for 20% off of the lifetime of your account. This podcast is also brought to you by Audible.com. Audible has over 180,000 plus audiobooks to choose from. Get your first audiobook free with a 30-day trial. Check out theshowradio.info/audiobook for your 30-day trial. So right now I have Nigel Hietala, developer of Destiny's Ishtar Commander. Just excited about this particular conversation. And from what I understand, he has been designing mobile apps for nearly 2 decades. And Ishtar Commander is actually the first app he designed himself. So Nigel, welcome to the show, man.
Thank you for having me. Very happy to be here.
Yeah, I was just so excited, man. Definitely want to plug you early. Patreon.com/Ishtar Commander. Also Twitter.com/Ishtar Commander. And definitely want to say to you, man, I thank you so much. Okay. So much for the wonderful app that you created, because that thing has bailed me out so many times and some tough situations for Destiny, and I appreciate what you've created and what you continue to iterate on top of this particular wonderful app, man. So how are you, man? Just talk to me a little bit. How are you, man?
Yeah, I'm good. I think it's the sort of middle of winter here in Finland, so this is like heading towards the coldest time of the year. But apart from freezing my butt off, life is good. And although it's been I think it's a quiet time in the world of Destiny at the moment, but that sort of gives me time to think about like the future of the app and work on some new ideas. So yeah, everything is good right now.
Very cool, man. So talk to me about Finland, man. I'm fascinated with even some of the things I've been checking out with the particular country or territory. Just the way education is set up over there, and even some of the global index that you guys are a part of. It seems like every time I hear Finland, it's mentioned either top 3 or number 1 for education or different things like that. So talk to me. Is that originally home or what's going on with that?
So originally, I'm English, and I moved to Finland 14 years ago to work for Nokia, and I was single when I moved, and I now have kids. And I think this whole education area is one of the reasons that I'm very happy to live here. And I don't really think about ever moving back. But yeah, I think I can't remember the name of the system. There's this like global system that measures education. And actually Finland, they're not number 1 anymore. I think but they're still in the top 3. And
that's amazing.
And it's, the first thing I noticed compared to Britain is that how would I describe it? I think in Britain there's extremes. There's some really bad schools and there's some exceptional schools. There's like quite a broad spectrum where you can end up going. And because of that, I mean, a lot of the reasons, say, if you live in London, that house pricing can vary is because people want to live next to the good schools. And in Finland, this is a bit of a oversimplification, but on the whole, I would say there isn't really extremely amazing schools at the top end, but there isn't the terrible schools at the bottom. It's all squashed into the middle. So everyone has a sort of a much fairer chance of getting a good education. And then I'm actually not sure of the history of how it happened, but definitely like a decade or so ago, something happened here which caused sort of the education system to be revamped. And to me, what's impressive is that they give the teachers here a lot more freedom in the way they teach the kids. So in Britain, it's people joke it's almost like a brick system where it's so the political rhetoric is, the teachers have lots of freedom, but really there's so many tests that the teachers are forced to teach to the test, and they're forced to teach a sort of very strict curriculum. Otherwise, the pupils won't be meeting those tests. Where here in Finland, I think it's not perfect, but there's definitely more freedom, and I think somehow that has worked into the results. So you see sort of smaller class sizes to what I was used to in Britain, although that's changing here as well. I mean, there's still here in Europe, there's been a lot of austerity, and so that has slightly, I think, weakened the education system here. But yeah, it's just like a completely different system. I mean, when my kids go to school, and they go into schools that, unlike in Britain, there's no fences. What's completely weird to me is that I can walk into my kids' school. If they've forgotten something, I'll just go there and take it to their classroom. And I don't know how it is in the US, but that completely freaked me out.
I can't. I have to do a name registration, and then they have to call her from the class via, the intercom, and then she has to be signed out, even when I have to pick her up like on a regular day, because she takes the bus on a regular basis. But when I drive her sometimes, my daughter, there's a whole bunch of checks and balances to make sure that nothing happens to, the kids at the particular school.
Yeah, it's exactly the same in Britain. So to me, that was like I think I have a guilty conscience. So whenever I go to the school, say they've forgotten their gloves or something, I always feel like I'm going to be arrested. But yeah, I can just walk to the classroom and give my kids their stuff. They're always on. They call their teachers by their first name, and they don't wear school uniforms, which are two things completely alien to me. And then the other thing that's, I'd say, really weird is that my kids, compared to what I had, have very little homework. So, and probably less hours actually at school, especially when they're younger. Even with the sort of unusual elements, the children here come away with a sort of a much better education in general than elsewhere. So yeah, I think there's plenty of articles online, and I think for me that all I'd say is that a lot of people say that the system here in Finland can't work elsewhere. I personally, after seeing my kids go through it every day, I'm not convinced about that. But I can say that when I think of like the British system and the problems they have, the problems are just so much bigger to solve. Where here in Finland, somehow it's not perfect, but the problems are easier. Even when I think about things like bullying or being teased, some of the things I had at school that weren't so pleasant. I mean, I didn't really have a bad time at school, but there was still like a lot of crazy fighting that went on that I just never see at my own kids' schools. And then I think the other thing I would say is that I really feel I left school and for several years I'd kind of lost the love of learning, and I haven't seen that happen with any of my own kids or the other kids I speak to here. And I think the one final thing I'd say on that I really appreciate is that in Britain, as you get older, when you get to the age of 16, you have to really specialize what you're doing. And so when I was at school, I had to choose 3 subjects and just continue with those. Where in Finland, you just don't really get that choice. You have to continue essentially with 6 or 7 subjects. But I think that's
isn't there a split though, like a vocational split and an academic split or something like that?
Yes, but I'm not. Yeah, as my kids are younger than that, I'm not the best person to ask about that. But
that's fine.
You do get a choice, but in general, I'd say you get. I think I was given the the choice to damage my own education at the age of 16, where you don't get that here. And I think that's for the better. I think specializing is a good idea sort of a bit later in your life when you get to university and things like that.
That's pretty awesome. And they start at 7, is that correct?
Yes, and I started school at 4.5, so that was a shock.
Yeah, that's crazy. Now your town where you are, based on I guess some of the information I was looking at, is that like a bike town, skateboard town, very close to the water type? What's the atmosphere there?
Yeah, I'm in a town called Oulu. It's about 150,000 people. Everybody, well, not everybody, but a lot of people cycle, and people cycle here all year round. And personally, I don't drive. At least I haven't driven since I moved to Finland. And I think actually it's got this town specifically, even within Europe, has a very good reputation because there are bike paths everywhere. And those bike paths also cleared through the winter. So if you're using studded tires, you can cycle all year round. And the way I always describe it is when I moved to Oulu, I could tell that like cycling wasn't really a health thing, because you see people cycling around and they're smoking at the same time. It's just the way people get around here. Although of course people drive as well.
That's pretty neat. So what about can you share some of like the trials that you face even from moving to and the process of I guess assimilating, if that's the right word for this, into that particular culture for Finland and Oulu? Yeah,
I think a lot of things have been easy because of the EU and freedom of movement. It was very easy, especially if you have a job, just to move to Finland. Nokia have such a wide and diverse workforce that they already have people dedicated just to looking after you when you move over. So that kind of thing. And like you can imagine that there's almost, I mean, when you move to another country, the first thing you're going to hit is the bureaucracy. And luckily there was this like assistant that helped me out with all the paperwork. But yeah, I mean, the other thing actually that's worth mentioning is that Finland has this kind of cool competition going on with Sweden about who can be the most advanced technologically. And so much stuff here has been automated and computerized. Like when I moved here, loads of people would tease me about how in Britain we use checks, where for years, checks were completely phased out as a way of paying for things here before I even arrived 14 years ago. And you also see that with a lot of the services. If you want to know about your taxes, you can look online, and that's been the case since the whole time I've been here almost. And with lots of other services, they're constantly being moved online. And not just that, but in in my opinion, very well designed, friendly services that are even available in English. And I would say my main failure sort of integrating is that in my daily life at the company, I mean, Nokia's official language is English. If you're meeting people that are under the age of 50, they're almost certainly going to at least understand you. So my Finnish is atrocious. And that's something that actually really actually irritates me and makes me feel like a poor citizen of Finland, and something I really should sort out. But that's the I think only tough thing. I think culturally, Finnish people are quite. First of all, I don't want to sort of stereotypically paint everyone with the same brush, but you'll find a huge diversity of people here. But on the whole, people are quite reserved and quieter and make less small talk with strangers. But that's not just out of unfriendliness. That's just how things are. I would say in general, people here are very polite. And so slowly getting to know people and dealing with the silence. I think it was, I took some of it personally at first until someone told me that normally if you meet Finnish people and you're being very quiet, it's not that they're judging you. They're probably more worried what you're thinking about them. So
they're kind of socially awkward.
Yes, I think that's fair to say. If you do a search on the internet, I can send you a link. And that's not the case for all people. And by the way, I am way more socially awkward than the average Finn. So that's probably why I enjoyed moving here. But there's people here appreciate personal space. And there's a funny picture someone took from a local town of people queuing for the bus. And there's only actually about 10 people waiting for this bus. And they still managed to make this enormous queue going down the street just to avoid standing near each other. But I think that's just people wanting to give each other space and their own time.
That's interesting. I've often heard that Finland is the land of angry birds and happy people. Is there some truth to that?
Uh, yes. Yeah, I would say definitely on the whole, people are pretty content here. Yeah, actually, a couple of things I could quickly mention is that maybe being from the US, you can also appreciate this this attitude. But I think in Britain, we have this attitude that the Industrial Revolution happened in Britain. It's absolutely one of the best countries in the world. And because of that, we don't need to look anywhere else. And because of that, we're sort of unaware of a lot of the flaws that exist. So when I moved to Finland, like the quality of engineering and the quality of housing is just, and the speed that things are fixed or repaired here, and like even on the scale of like buildings and bridges, just because of probably historical, practical reasons. I mean, here if you don't have a well-built house, it literally will fall down just through the forces of freezing and thawing every year. And the same with building. That although these days you can actually build straight through the winter, I think people are used to having to get things done efficiently and on time. So there's this amazing culture, and things are just very well crafted and put together, and that I really appreciated. And I think Finns are like a very practical and pragmatic people at getting things done. Yes, it's absolutely freezing here in the winter. I also live 200 kilometers south of the Arctic Pole, so at the moment I get like 3 hours of very poor daylight, and that's it. And then it's just dark, like incredibly dark the whole time. But then it's the opposite in the summer, where there'll be like 3 hours of almost twilight, not even proper dark. And I think the summers here in Finland are just amazing. It's just a lot of people will go. So this may blow your mind if you don't know this. People will take 4 weeks holiday in one block in the summer and spend most of that time often at a summer house around one of the many lakes in Finland.
That's awesome, though.
Yeah, and they'll just sit around, enjoy the sauna, and fish, or just spend time with the family. And that's like, it's really hard to describe, but it's just, to me, it's just wonderful. You can go along and just pick berries in the forest and just relax and forget about all the hassles of work and daily life. And that's, I think, a really amazing part of life here.
That's pretty awesome. So you mentioned Nokia. So one of the things I definitely want to ask about that, have you always been in design?
Yeah, and even before I worked for Nokia when I was in London. So yeah, it's nearly 20 years I've been working designing on mobile apps and actually mobile products themselves. I was working for a company called Scion that turned into a company called Symbian that was then later bought by Nokia. And all of that time is spent, if you imagine, say you have your iPhone or an Android phone, and if you were designing an app, you would design an app that like fits how those apps look and feel. I was actually working on the teams that would design the look and feel, sort of the overall style and UI guidelines for those Nokia products. And most of my experience has been, even from a very early stage, with touchscreen devices, even before touchscreens became the dominant force that they are today. And then even today, I still work on designing iPhone and Android applications. And what's unique about Ishtar, it's just the first application I've also written all the code for myself and not just worked on the design.
That's amazing. So talk about that. I'm glad you really led into that. So what about crafting like the perfect intuitive user experience for mobile? Like, what would you say in regards to that?
Wow. Yeah, I always feel reluctant to give advice, as I'm not so sure if my advice is that useful. But I would say the sort of the key things that have really guided me is first of all, I started my career before I was actually doing design. I was working on a telephone support line for these small mobile computers that existed at the company I worked at. And the one takeaway from answering the phone for 2 years is that for a lot of people, even if they can do a little something with the software that helps them in their life, just that is amazingly powerful. I think if you are someone that is comfortable using a computer or very comfortable using a smartphone, you probably don't realize that you are in a surprisingly tiny minority of people. And there are a lot of people that struggle with a lot of just basic things. And so that was my takeaway, that just if people can do something, even something simple that actually is, that isn't, 200 features, but they can actually use one or two, that's incredibly important. And I'd say the other thing I sort of live by is starting as simple as possible, not worrying about 2 million features in the app, and very slowly just building on those over time. And I think that for me is the secret of how you make something usable and intuitive. If you try and say, if you wanted to, like we're talking on Skype, which is one of the craziest applications on the planet. I'm always impressed how they managed to redesign this whole app and still make it unusable. And I think if you were working on a Skype competitor, your first thought is, if we're going to beat Skype, we need to have every single feature they have and more. And if you start that project by trying to build all of those features at once, there's just no way, in my opinion, you're going to end up with a good design. You have to be really brave and say, what is the absolute core? What is the one or two features that we could have that actually people would be happy with as a starting point, and then build it from there. So I think what I'm saying sounds a bit trite or simplistic, but I've seen so many projects that have failed, or that the results have been terrible, just because people worry about way too much at the beginning. And just getting the basics right will normally always set you in a great direction for the future.
So is the end goal to be the companion app for Destiny for everyone who plays the game?
Ooh, yeah. I had to say that I'm happy to talk about all of this. I had to say that the advice I could give around Ishtar Commander is probably terrible advice if you're working on a commercial app. But I would tell you how I think about Ishtar Commander. So first of all, yeah, I want it to be. I think for me, first of all, is the one thing I try and keep is that Ishtar Commander is the ultimate app to have by your side while you're playing Destiny. And that's a bit different to, I think, the ultimate companion and doing everything. And maybe you say, I'm friends with the guys that work on DIM, and they have some awesome features around managing your gear and tagging it for deletion if you want to get rid of stuff later on. And I think they have some really cool stuff there. And I kind of ignore a lot of those features because they're not about what's happening while you're playing Destiny. And that's my main concern. If there's anything that I can just reduce some friction or reduce the irritation of playing Destiny while you're there in front of it, that's the kind of stuff that I'm really interested in solving. And then I would say everything else I do on the project is simply based on what entertains me and what keeps me happy in a I'd say extremely selfish way. But somehow that seems to please a lot of other people.
As far as security and login credentials, and at one point I realized that the app would only log me in for a certain amount of time, and I think you recently extended that through an update. So definitely touch on public versus private endpoints as it relates to security and then login credentials and stuff like that.
Yeah. Okay. So Bungie, I think, as far as I know, they're almost unique in this, is that other companies have an API, sort of a system of getting data out of from the game you're playing, but normally it's around statistics. So if you're playing something like Paragon, you can get access to the leaderboards. But Destiny have made the whole API that their mobile companion app and their website use available to third parties. And if you're writing a web extension, you can do that in a pretty secure way. But if you want to create a mobile app, in a way, Bungie have allowed third-party mobile apps to exist, but they haven't really supported it in an official way. And so because of that, actually, I'll give the technical details, but basically to access Bungie's services, you need 3 cookies, just like normal cookies you have on a website. And that's not a standard way that mobile apps would...
Is that the bungle cookie?
Yes, that's exactly it.
Okay.
And because of that weird system, if you're a mobile app, you have to have your own private web view in the app, and people need to enter their username and password for either their PlayStation account or their Xbox account, and that is then authenticated and then Bungie recognize that, you're the real user, and then their website presents those 3 cookies, and because it's a private web view, I can grab those 3 cookies, and then from that point on, I throw away your username and password, and I just use those cookies, and they last for 3 weeks. And the critical point is that whether people are aware of it or not, is that because it's a private web view, in theory, people could capture your username and password at that point. And so there's a problem here, which is that you have to trust me or whoever else made the mobile app that we're not doing anything bad. And you can kind of protect yourself. You can, if you use two-factor authentication, then even if I did steal your username and password, it's essentially useless, because I also need that extra code that every time you log in, you get a text message sent to you. But it's still a essentially an insecure system. And a secure system would be that you can say to Ishtar Commander, I give you permission to use my Destiny account, and then I have access to it, but I never see your username and your password, because those are that's your private stuff. And then you don't have to worry about whether Nigel Hietala is Dr. Evil or not, because I don't actually have access to anything more than your Destiny account, in the sense of being able to transfer your items around and see the items. And also you would have a system where you can revoke access. So if you've used applications on Twitter, you're probably used to if you install a Twitter analytics app, you sort of click a button to give it permissions. Exactly the same on Facebook. And then later on, if you suddenly decide I don't like this app, you can just revoke the permissions. So all of what I've described is coming from Bungie. They actually have a new authorization system, and that will actually be in the next version of the app. So in the next version of Ishtar Commander, I'll go into the technical nitty-gritty. If you're on Android, what will happen is you'll get to a point and it will say, do you want to give this app permission to access your account? And you'll click yes. And at that point, you will move over to the system web browser. You'll log in to your Bungie account if you're not already logged in. You'll click, it will pop up saying Ishtar Commander wants to access your account, and you'll click yes, and it will bounce you back to Ishtar Commander, and that will now have access to your account. If you're on an iPhone or iPad, Apple don't allow that system of bouncing between web browsers. So instead, it will be using the standard secure Safari view. If you're already logged into your Bungie account using the normal Safari, it'll already be logged in. Otherwise, you'll need to log in the app. But it's the Apple secure view. So me as a third party, I have no access to your data. And if you want to be extra paranoid, you can still go over to mobile Safari and log in there. And then again, you just click Approve Ishtar Commander and you'll have access. And the final thing is that you will then be logged in for a year. It won't ask you again. You won't get that annoying message that you've been logged out after 3 weeks.
Yeah, that was my next question. Would it be indefinitely, or how long it would be? So you definitely covered that. So in terms of feature sets, now obviously the app has been out for a while, and there's a lot of code, I'm sure, built into the actual app. So if I'm coming into Destiny for the first time and I've never used the app, what should I expect? What would you tell someone coming into Ishtar Commander for the first time?
I would describe it as first of all, you're going to need to play Destiny for a little bit, I think, before at least for a couple of days. I would just get used to the Destiny UI. But what I've tried to do, and what even Bungie haven't done, is recreate all of the interface that you recognize and that you learn to use in the game, and I've tried to recreate it onto your mobile phone. So literally your phone or your tablet ends up almost feeling like this magical window straight into the Destiny UI. And then you get an overview of each of your characters, and if you have a large enough phone or tablet, if you can even look at it in landscape and see all of your characters. And I think personally I have to say, if you're playing Destiny and you don't have one each of the characters, you're not playing the game properly. At least I get a lot more enjoyment. Even though I personally spend most of my time these days playing as a Titan, I think if you enjoy the PvP side of Destiny, you really need to play as a hunter and as a warlock occasionally. Otherwise, you really don't understand those characters or how to counter them. And then the app itself is all about removing the most tedious and boring parts of Destiny. So the first one is reducing the amount of times. I mean, I would love to reduce it to 0. Sorry, I can't. I'm kind of limited by what Bungie offer, but reducing the time you go to the tower. So if you want to, quickly run all the nightfalls one after the other, you're probably going to need to transfer your favorite weapons. So I've made it really easy to move the weapons between the characters. A lot of people don't find this, but you can actually tap at the top of the screen. You'll see an emblem which will say like Hunter or Warlock, and the details about your character. You can tap that and you get access to loadout. So you could even create a loadout of your favorite weapons, and then just by tapping that, all of those weapons and armor will be transferred to that character, which is the kind of thing that can just take you. It sort of saves you, I think, a good 10 minutes from what it would cost you if you had to do that in game by flying to the tower and taking things in and out of the vault. And then I would say, yeah, there's just a lot of details just to save you time. So while you're flying into a mission or you're in the middle of a raid, you can quickly check things. You can quickly have a look at your bounties. You can quickly move materials over to your character. I mean, there's a lot of little details there, but I would say the one thing I've tried to make a ton of effort is stuff that you probably won't notice. So when you open the app, it as quickly as possible presents your stuff. So I always had the idea that you're about to play a game of Rift with your friends, and you have like 20 seconds to get a specific weapon that you forgot about. And so you can open the app, and hopefully within that small amount of time, it will open up, show your details, and you can grab that weapon and transfer it to your character.
Yeah, so and it's pretty good. It's pretty good even doing that, because yesterday I was playing Skirmish, and in the middle of the match, I'm like, okay, these guys are really taking me out too quick. I said, I don't think they're ready for this Clever Dragon. Let me transfer this real quick. So I added the Clever Dragon to my Hunter at the time when I was playing last night, and that thing just, takes out anybody in its way. And it's pretty accurate, even the long range. But I had the opportunity to do that without necessarily going to the tower and all those different things. And it just changed the whole direction of the match. And we ended up, we lost the first one. We won the second one, which is really how it went. But just the ability to do that so quickly is pretty incredible, man. So I definitely enjoy using the actual app. I definitely wanted to ask you here is, are you considering a database of weapon archetypes to compare with your own vault? For example, I do not have Black Spindle, and if I wanted to know what tier of archetype that Black Spindle is, are you going to consider to incorporate that, or only the weapons that you currently have at your possession to compare to?
Yeah, at least currently, I have no plans to do that. Although one thing I do think about is being able to inspect the weapons you have and see all the possible perks those weapons can have. I see a lot of people debating and looking sometimes for perks that actually don't even exist on certain weapons. But the database idea, I do sometimes think about that. But I think if that ever happens, I would probably do it as a standalone app. And I'm not sure how I would fit that within Ishtar Commander and keep it simple.
Okay.
So yeah, so sorry to disappoint.
No, that's okay. That's okay. But I'm glad that you made the transition to even consider another app. What's the cost to actually do Ishtar Commander monthly, yearly? I definitely, please throw that out there so individuals know exactly what they're supporting, because we're downloading this thing for free, and this thing is making grind work like 85% better than it was when we actually started playing Destiny. So what's the cost involved, financially for Ishtar?
Well, first, yeah, the main cost, apart from to my mental health, is just the time. So, if you want to develop an app that, I'm using an amazing cross-platform framework that saves me a lot of time. But if you want to develop for both Android and iPhone, you have to have a Mac. It's impossible to compile an iPhone app without a Mac. So that's the biggest cost upfront you're going to hit straight away. So if you want to deploy to the App Store, a Mac is a prerequisite, and there's absolutely no reasonable way to work around that. If you have a Mac, you can also do Android development there, and then like the Apple developer account is just, I think it's $99 a year. I think the Google account is $35. I don't think it's a year though. I think it was just like a one-off payment. I could be wrong, so just presume that's $35 a year. And then, I mean, I personally use quite a lot of the Adobe tools. I spend a lot of time using Photoshop to copy a lot of the Destiny UI, and so that has. I have no idea actually what Photoshop costs, but I mean, if you have like an Adobe subscription, you're looking at like $50-$60 a month there. But for my just general work, I need that. So that's not really an actual a real cost to me, because that's part of just my day job. And then the biggest thing for an app like Ishtar Commander is just the time, because.
So how much time are we talking from one update to another? Well, how much time would you say in total hours?
I honestly have no idea. I have to say, these days I don't work so crazily on the app. That there's enough of a foundation there that I'm able to add things that people seem to think are pretty large and are very happy with, but are not taking up I don't have to completely sacrifice my family anymore. But I honestly don't know. I can't put it in a specific time, but I can give you an example that I would imagine there's easily 24 hours of non-stop work just in making the icons look correct in Destiny, just because if you look at Ishtar Commander and you look at any of the other apps, including even the official one from Bungie,
I actually have it open right now, so I'm looking at it right now.
So if you know the icons for your weapons and your armor and the materials, this is a tiny detail, but the border, so that when you're upgrading your armor, when you're upgrading it, the border is white, and then Correct. When it's fully upgraded, it becomes yellow. Funnily enough, that border is actually drawn on top of the icons. It actually ends up clipping off the edges of all the icons. And if you look at most of the other apps out there, they just presume that why would Bungie spend all this time creating this amazing artwork and then clip off the edges? So they actually draw the border outside of those icons. And I think people don't quite, I mean, unless they're completely mad like me, they're not going to spend hours zoomed in Photoshop and looking at these things. But I think people do sort of have an intuitive feeling that something doesn't look quite the same as it does in Destiny.
Right. So
I spent a huge amount of time getting all those details correct, that, if you've got an exotic equipped, the other exotics will be dimmed, all of those things, just so everything you learn from playing the game can be reused when you're doing the app. And I spent an amazing amount of time getting the animations as close as possible to in-game, and that's just hours and hours of sort of tedious recording a video using my PlayStation and then stepping through it frame by frame to try and work out how Bungie are doing various animations, none of which I can really get 100% correct, but I can get them to the point that most people just aren't going to notice. They're not perfect. And personally, I love doing that. That to me, like in my daily job, I'm working on applications that people use like 100 times a day, like a calendar or a phone book. You cannot have crazy animations in those apps without pissing everybody off. It's like a really bad idea to have flashy animations. In a Destiny app, it's perfectly acceptable. It's fine, and I think it adds to the fun. And I just get a huge kick out of recreating those details. And I think Bungie have done an amazing job. And it's just like a huge pleasure to copy those things. But to copy those kind of details, it takes hours and hours. It takes a long time. People probably imagine that I spend most of my time like programming the more complicated things, like how to transfer your weapons or maximize your light or the farming mode. But actually, most of the effort goes into making the user interface look and behave as closely to the game as possible. And that's where I put all of the effort. And that's the thing that I get a huge kick out of.
So Jonathan Davila asks, have you been approached by Bungie to work with them?
No, I haven't. But yeah,
really?
Actually, that's a really complicated area. I don't actually know how happy I would be, because I have you had a previous guest talking about the importance of I think there's something like artist integrity and being able to like have a singular vision. And my day job is like working with in very large teams. And as far as I can tell, at Bungie, their mobile application side and their website side are quite separated from the people that create the amazing in-game UI. So I would love to work with the people that work on that incredible in-game UI, but it seems that I'd be away from that, and I would then be in a situation of going from where I can make all the decisions, even though every single decision I make, I try and think, how does this fit in as closely as possible with what Bungie already have? I just say, during the day in my job, I'm happy to compromise. Well, happy is the wrong word. I'm often unhappily and politely compromise with the tens of people around me to get the job done. But I think on Ishtar, it's been a real pleasure just to do everything myself and make every single decision and choice almost on my own. So yeah, I would have to, I think, sacrifice that if I ever went to Bungie. But I don't know if that would ever really work out as well, as I have no plans to leave Finland. But it would be a huge compliment, or at least it would be awesome to go for an interview there and actually meet the people behind this awesome game.
That's very cool. Sean Michelle asks, in regards to Tier 12 gear and stuff like that, can you touch on that a little bit in regards to, I know you briefly touched on it in regards to armor grading and keeping the actual app as simple as possible. The colors that you currently have is the gold, the bronze, and the silver. Is that the way you plan to keep it, as far as that's concerned?
Okay, I'm going to presume the subtext to this question is, why don't I show the percentages like Tower Ghost and...
yeah, that was another question from Mike Corby. Yeah, so I guess we could combine both of the questions together, yeah.
Wow, don't let me ramble on this. I'm trying to try and give a very...
No,
brief,
please do, man.
Okay.
That's why you're here. This is your soapbox, man. I'm just here recording. That's it.
Right. If you played... This, in my opinion, is an area that is one of the suckiest things in Destiny. So Destiny has this concept of intellect, discipline, and strength, and they reduce how fast you can get your super, your grenades, and your charged melee. And your armor has a kind of random roll, give you like 20 intellect and 10 strength. And so you kind of have to find, and if you have enough of the right gear, you can actually get what's called 12 tiers of cooldown. So you can get like 5 strength, 5 intellect, and 2 discipline, or variants of that, like 444.
444, yeah.
Yeah, and Tower Ghost was the first app that I'm aware of to implement this system. So this system, how this like works, was actually worked out in the community by a bunch of people on Reddit who did personally, they did all the hard work, and they even worked out the exact formulas and even put them into Reddit posts in a way that I could literally copy and paste straight into my code. So all the hard stuff has been done by the community. It's kind of an awesome thing that they discovered, not only that this was going on, but that they could sort of reverse engineer the algorithm. But the algorithm, there are some reasons that it's impossible for it to be completely accurate. So if you look in Destiny, you will see your armor that you have like 70 points of strength, but it's definitely can be guessed that Bungie store that as a floating point number, so it's more like 70.2 or 70.3 of strength, and you don't know what that little extra bit of value is. So because of that, you can't actually calculate whether this is definitely the best armor. Because to add into the confusion, which I haven't mentioned, is when that piece of armor is lower than, I think, what is it these days? 350 light?
It doesn't get calculated, right?
Yeah. So the algorithm is actually calculating what it will be at when it's 350. So when you see I'm giving you a gold grading, so long as you're above, I think, 260 light, that gold grade is accurate. And actually, the grade doesn't show up if the armor is lower than that. And I think these days, since Rise of Iron, you don't even see armor drop below that unless you're leveling up a new character. But so what happened was that
I have a question right there for you. So should I be confident to break down a silver that is not gold, or can that silver turn into gold? Should I be, and how can I test that? Because I think you did a video on that where you showed the potential grading when you, I guess, check the extra settings from the bronze to the silver to the gold. Can you touch on that?
Yeah. So first of all, if on certain items, if you're new to the game and you first of all shouldn't care about this at all, and if you're looking at something like you're looking at something like gauntlets, if you're using a hand cannon, it's critical you have gauntlets with a hand cannon reload speed. That's the number one thing you need. I'm now presuming that you have that, or have several gauntlets with the right perk. If you see you have the gauntlets that are bronze, then it's sort of unthinkingly okay to shard those. If they're silver, it's not necessary that it's worth deleting them, because you don't need everything to be gold to reach tier 12. You just need a majority of the stuff to be gold. So you should long press the item and have a look at the much more detailed bar chart that I show that pops up. And if there's a good chunk of silver there, I wouldn't immediately delete the item. I would say the secret of success, if you're wanting to build a 12 tier character, is there's bugged artifacts out there. If you get an artifact that drops and it's got intellect and discipline, it can be way higher than any of the other artifacts. And this is why Tower Ghost and Dim have this completely nutty system where you can have items that are higher than 100% perfect. So to me, 100% means the best it can possibly be. So that is why I just decided this system is completely nuts. And I'm friends with the Dim guys. They'll forgive me for saying that. And besides, I blame them for copying a nutty system from someone else. And I don't show the percentages because I think they're confusing. They're confusing in two ways. That you often see that this item is 98% to 99%, and that's because of the inaccuracy in the formula. It can't actually give you a specific percentage. And then I decided that I wanted to have a system that pushed people in a good direction. So when you're building your armor set, the class items and the ghosts, they contribute the least number of points to your total build. So if you're looking for a perfect gold class item or a perfect gold ghost, you're personally, in my opinion, just wasting your time, because I think it's like just a total of 60 points they can contribute, where something like chest is like 140. An amazing artifact is like, I think can be up to 130. It's like your legs, your chest, your gauntlets, your helmets, your artifacts. That's where the emphasis should be going if you want to get a tier 12 build without doing your head in. So I actually tilt the scales towards those items. And because of that, I decided instead of showing a percentage, the final thing I have to say, just want to mention, which I thought was crazy, is that if you get a piece of armor, there's a minimum value it can be. It's always going to have at least like 20 points of something. You're never going to get something that is 0. And that is where those percentages come from. So like a 0% piece of armor would be a piece of armor that has 0 stats, which doesn't exist. So that's why you have this really funny system where everyone is going, you need to have everything must be, above 87% or above 88%. It's like a really, to me, unintuitive and weird system. So I decided I would just have bronze as in junk, silver as in tier 11, and then gold as in tier 12. And then I fudge some of the values to push you towards finding a decent artifact, not worrying so much about your ghost and your class items. And so when people say, could you please show the percentage, I have a serious problem, which is I think only people that have read lots of stuff on Reddit or know this stuff in detail are going to understand what the percentages are. But I've also tilted the system that my percentages wouldn't even be the same as what Tower Ghost and Dim have. So it'd still, I think, actually be even more confusing to show them. So that's my very long explanation on why I went that route and why I'm never going to reveal what the actual numbers are.
That's awesome. So today is Friday. Zer's in town, and I know according to some of the stuff that I did see at the vendor for the speaker, he has two things that are considered 100% technically. I guess however that percentage works. So I'll say technically for now. Yeah. So he has a thing for the Hunter, I believe, and also a thing for the Titan that's 100%. So now I know Zer's in town. I typically check Reddit to see what he has. Now, are we going to see those things from your app soon? Is that something that you're considering, vendor roles and Zer stuff?
Absolutely. So I don't know when it will happen, but I'm kind of already putting together what will be Ishtar Commander 2.0, and that'll be a pretty significant update, probably around March, maybe later in the year. There'll probably be quite a gap. I mean, after this next version has the new login, I think there'll be quite a gap while I work on this new 2.0 update, which I would like to be a significant one. And I think the vendors is definitely something I will add. So that is literally everybody you can walk up to in the game and see things like bounties or that they're selling stuff, that will show up. And the way it works in Destiny is it's one simple system. So once I get it working, I get all of the vendors, and Zur is a vendor as well. So I will get that. And just the way that I developed the tier system, it will automatically grade everything people have and what Zur has. So once I add the vendors, the armor grading kind of comes for free.
Very cool. Now, do you think a search function is necessary for your app because you're trying to keep everything so clean? Would you consider a search function?
Yes, that's definitely on my way high up the list for stuff in 2.0. I have some. I'm not going to talk about it, but if you're very imaginative, I have some pretty cool power user features I think I could shove into search, because I think it's a pretty good area to put complicated functions, because it's not getting in the way. I mean, you just have to, you have the search bar wherever I put it, and then once you're in the search, then perhaps you could start manipulating the data and the results you get from that, without it complicating the rest of the app, because if you don't tap that area, it's not really getting in the way. But yes, I would love to have a search, and that's a big thing on my mind these days.
Very cool. And the last question from social media comes from Ison_Brandon, asks, I have a Dead Orbit exotic quest, but it's not getting progress. Do I need to wear a full set of Dead Orbit gear or just a Dead Orbit cloak? I don't know if you can touch on that or anyway.
Ooh, I think it's just isn't there three things? You need to wear a Dead Orbit shader, a Dead Orbit emblem, and you can check both of those just by going over to the vendor and the emblem kiosk, because they're all grouped together. You'll be able to see which are like the Future War Cult emblems and which are the Dead Orbit emblems, and the same for the shaders. But I can't remember off the top of my head. There's something weird with one of the vendors that you can get the class. There's a bunch of the class items that don't count if you wear them towards the quest, and instead you need to buy or get some other specific class item to ensure you get the one that does let the quest continue. But I don't know that off the top of my head, but I do know that I think it was in the April update, they added like a whole bunch of class items for things like Future War Cult, and some of them, if you wear them, it won't progress that quest. You need to have the older class items, but you need to go and Google that. I imagine if it's not progressing, it's the class item that's the issue.
Okay, all right. So I have one more question for you, but before I ask you that, I definitely want to say thank you for taking the time to come. I'm also going to give you the opportunity to give your last pitch for Ishtar Commander, and then I'm going to ask you my last question, and then we'll begin to wrap up. So yeah. So your last pitch, man. Great app.
I would say if you're not using my app, or you haven't used it, and you love Destiny, you sort of you enjoy the time, but also you love how it looks and how it's being crafted and this whole world, and you would like to see what happens if someone who also loves all of that and decided to sacrifice far too much of their time, recreated as much of that on a mobile device with all of the look, all of the animations, and even all of the sounds. And it's completely free to try out as well. There's no hidden costs either as well. It's just a free app for Android and iPhone. I would say check it out because it's been a real passion project of mine, and I just can't believe anyone that if you love Destiny, I can't believe you won't get a kick out of using this app. And I recommend as well, make sure you have sound turned on your device the very first time you use it, as there's some fun Easter eggs I added in even as you log into the app.
Very cool. All right, so question for you. So you're on an island and you are the only person on this island, and you had an option. And you could only pick one, okay, between having the option to play Destiny or unlimited supply of chocolate. What would you pick?
Oh, it's chocolate. Don't even have to think about that. I'm
just chocolate for sure.
I'm a complete crazy chocoholic. And I'm also one of those horrible people that doesn't seem to gain weight regardless of what junk they eat, which I'm sure will come and bite me in later in life. But yeah, it's the chocolate. Sorry, Destiny. Chocolate first.
Chocolate first. All right, where can they find you, man? I appreciate your time, and definitely where can they find you and get the app? You've been wonderful, man. I appreciate your time.
I know, this has been great, and this has been some tough, and you've really pulled out a lot of interesting thoughts on me. I would say because I work on the app essentially alone, I've kind of focused everything into just a couple of areas. So if you're interested in supporting the app, I have a Patreon page, which is just I think patreon.com/Ishtar Commander. And people come and they sub for like $1 to $5 a month. And I occasionally provide a video to them detailing what's going on. At the moment, I'm actually working on a whole series of videos for my Patreon supporters talking about the second version of the app. And that's been very nice. And it brings me plenty of actually money that I can spend on chocolate or taking my family to dinner. So that's been pretty nice. And then everything else is around my Twitter account, which is twitter.com/Ishtar Commander. And as you know, even though most social media has some really awful sides, I personally have got a huge amount out of Twitter. I think I really enjoy, occasionally I actually even talk about the app and talk about new features, but normally I tweet about silly things that are going on in the community and stuff that are just on my mind. I think because it's such a wide, diverse community, and it's a community that if you're playing Destiny, you probably love complaining about Destiny, and that means people are constantly making contradictory and funny complaints about the game. So I often like to poke fun about that on the Twitter account, and it's been a real pleasure to have that and good fun, and somehow nearly ended up with 7,000 followers, which is completely insane.
No, that's absolutely incredible, man. I definitely appreciate your work, and it really has made my Destiny grind and experience much easier, man. So I thank you for your time, man. I'm not going to hold you any longer. Definitely enjoy Finland, and I look forward to even doing some strikes with you if you ever have any time for that.
Yeah, let's do an Eiffel together. That'd be awesome.
Thanks for listening to this episode of The Show Radio, episode 329. Thanks for also leaving your questions. The show is on iTunes, Android, Stitcher, iHeartRadio, Google Play, and even YouTube. Subscribe with your favorite podcast app. Featured track on this episode is called Resolve by Knapsack. Link will be in the show notes, as well as the Twitter, the Facebooks, and the feedback stuff. All that will be in the show notes. Thanks for tuning in, and I'll see you in the next one. Peace.
You're listening to The Show Radio. Visit our blog at theshowradio.info. Subscribe and rate us on iTunes at theshowradio.info/iTunes. theshowradio.info/iTunes.